Waiters, what's the saddest and waiting for someone you have experienced? Story 1. I used to work birthdays at a science museum. So, one weekend, the birthday family arrives. I then back to their room, as usual, and start talking with the mom about how she wants things to go, setting up the room, etc. She mentions that they just moved here, and her son doesn't have many friends yet. So they invited one cousin about their son's age, and then just invited the kid's entire second grade, maybe, class to the party. An hour goes by, and the little cousin has shown up, but nobody else. The little dude invited every kid in his class, and not one of them showed up. Now, to be honest, the birthday boy himself didn't seem that concerned. He and his cousin were happily playing with each other the whole time. I just don't think he was really that warmed up to the kids in his class to begin with. But the mom was heartbroken. She had set this party up for her son, had bought a birthday package that included a private room, general admission for all guests, and me taking a dewar of liquid nitrogen to the room and making ice cream for the party. She had high hopes for this, and nobody showed. And she was in tears. And she asked me to go out the museum and just invite random kids into her son's birthday party, just so that there would be at least some other kids for him to play with. And this is the part that he'll never forget. We found a half dozen kids who were interested in coming to the party, and the mom was very grateful to them. But word also got out to the staff, and the staff absolutely rallied around this kid. Other employees showed up to sing him happy birthday. Some staffers went to the gift shop to buy him gifts. One of my managers got the family vouchers for future admission. We have a mascot, a robot, who will walk around and play with guests, and he showed up to the party with some gift from our gift shop. I brought down the materials for making a couple of different types of homemade slime, and made slime with the kids. One of my coworkers, one of the smartest and kindest people I've ever met, spoke with the mom about the son's interests, and discovers the birthday boy is a fan of the Avengers. So he goes back to where we have a laser etcher on display, and comes back with a burning that is a picture of the Avengers wishing the son happy birthday. By the end of the party, the mom was in tears again, but for a very different reason. A few days later, she sent us the sweetest letter about how much it all meant to her. I worked 3 to 5 birthdays a weekend, every weekend for about 5 years, and they were always fun, but that was the absolute best day at work I've ever had. Story 2, I haven't bartended in a million years, but the saddest one was a guy in his 30s. He had a two-top, asked for a bottle of top-shelf champagne, candles lit, all that. Told me they were celebrating, no one showed. Guy looked morose, but had an appetizer, poured a glass of champagne for the person who wasn't there, then asked for the bill. I felt bad. He obviously got stood up, so I brought him a dessert in the house. He smiled and told me it was his anniversary. My face must showed my sadness for him. So he clarified, his wife died of cancer a few months ago. It may have been the saddest thing I've seen. Story 3, I was actually a hostess at the time, and I was asked to take the table for a server. An old man came in asking for a table of 6, and he asked for 6 waters. I set up his table, and I put his order in. He said it was his birthday. He was there for about an hour or two, and nobody showed up. It was really sad. He ended up tipping me like 30, and he said sorry for the trouble. I still think about that guy. I hope he's doing okay. Story 4, once in my shift, I saw a really shy guy. You could see that he's on a budget, but OMG, he was trying so hard and looked so excited about upcoming date. He brought 1 rose and asked what he can purchase on 10 euros to make this evening beautiful. My heart melted so much that I offered him for free 2 glasses of wine and a dessert. I was a manager. We put on a table some candles, and so he was sitting there and with the big smile waiting for his date to come. But she never came. He waited like 2 hours, nervously checking on his phone. When he left, he gave this rose to me and thanked for kindness towards him. He was so broke, so was my heart about this situation. Story 5, I was a server for 5 years, and the most heartbreaking experience I had was an older woman, probably in her 60s, was waiting for her grandson to come meet her for lunch. When I greeted her at the table, she was very excited as I assumed she didn't see him much. As time went by, no one showed up, so she decided to order. Towards the end of her meal, no had shown up, so it being a slow shift, me and my GF, we worked together at the same restaurant, which is where we met, decided to just talk with her for a little bit and give her some company. We both felt so sad for this sweet old lady, but we could tell that simple act of kindness made her day. Shame on that grandson. Story 6, not the waitstaff, but the waiter. I had set an OkCupid date at this nice coffee shop in Brooklyn. I get there, and I know the barista from college, and the only person in the shop at the time, so we talk a little awkwardly. Gradually, other customers arrive, so she attends to them, and I attend to my phone. It gets to the point where my date is 20 minutes late and hasn't been responding to my messages asking about an ETA. I'm sweating profusely. I'm so embarrassed that I'm probably being stood up in front of someone who I had several classes with years prior and knows most of my friends. I feel so humiliated. Then my date walks in, stands there for a moment, and walks right back out the door. Barista, was that her? Me up, barista. What in that comment made things slightly better. Story 7 place I used to work. I had a man come in every night for a week, wait for a few hours, order food and drinks, then leave with no one showing up. Later learned he was just trying to cope with his wife's death, believing that Shed arrived to greet him at the restaurant where they had their first date. Story 8, a 6-year-old boy came every day with his older brother at lunchtime, and for almost a month they ordered 3 plates of food and always left one. When I attended to them, the boy told his older brother to ask his mother for lunch because she was already arriving, but their mother never came. The boy's older brother asked me to give the food to someone who needed it when they left, and he told me that his mother had died and that he did not know how to explain to his little brother that his mother was not coming back. But that this cafeteria, it was the last place where she had taken her little brother to eat, and that is why the boy believed that she would return for the dinner. Story 9, a woman came in 4 nights in a row just in case she got the day wrong. She'd sit at the bar wearing the same flowery dress every night and would hopefully look at the door every single time it opened. Left in tears the first 2 nights, when we closed, the 3rd and 4th nights, she just stared vacantly at the door until we had to make sure she left. I never saw her again. I don't think any of the staff did either, but we all felt really bad for her. She got a couple free drinks and apps. We didn't even care if it was a scam because she seemed so broken about it. Story 10, not a waiter, but to cheer this thread up, I waited an hour and a half for my date to show once. I ended up sitting texting my friends, fed up, but kept telling myself, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. Just as I was about to give up, she showed. She explained she was a nurse on a mental health ward, and one of her young people had gone into crisis. She'd been stressing the whole time. Anyway, we've been married 10 years in February. Sometimes it's worth the wait. Edit, thanks for all your lovely comments, everyone. Glad I was able to offer a little sunshine through all the sadness. Story 11, okay, this story did not happen to me, but to my friend. My friend was a manager, still ICE, at a pretty fancy restaurant. She was working during Valentine's Day. A guy walked in pretty nicely dressed, but not too nicely, kind of nervous. He's walked to a table for 2. Since it was Valentine, the restaurant did its best to give off a romantic atmosphere. Roses on the table, love-themed dessert, etc. The guy ordered water and start to wait. When the waiter tries to take his order, he tells he's waiting for someone. He waits for an hour's, the 2, and then 3. Each time, sending, checking his phone. Trying to call someone. After a while, my friend goes to talk to him. This guy had lost his girlfriend of 6 years. He was 24 at the time 2 years ago, and it was his first date ever since. After that, she talked to him a bit more about him, how life is, etc., etc. Turns out they had quite a bit in common. So they exchanged contact. A lot happened afterward, but they've been happily married for 2 years now. He is now 30. She is 28. Story 12 was working an evening shift, and a relatively younger guy came in and waited for his date. She showed up, and not even 10 minutes later, he got up and left, and she sat there crying. Patrons that are there to break up are also hard to witness. Story 13, I had a regular who would always come in with his wife. One day, he sat in my section, and I noticed his wife wasn't with him. I asked, "Where's your wife today?" He replied, "She's in heaven waiting for me." Immediately, I died inside. Story 14, got sat a party of 15 to 20 for a woman's bridal shower. Her mom decorated the table and chairs and the whole corner for the party. Everyone in the restaurant could see there was going to be a party there on a busy Friday night. For people showed of the possible 20. That includes the future bride and mom. I didn't even care about the money. I was missing out on 4 tables in my section gone on a busy weekend shift. I just felt so bad for her. Story 15, not a waiter, but this happened to me. I went speed dating, turned up to the venue to find it very quiet. Barely anyone was there. The event was on the 2nd floor, so I got a pint for the time being and sat down and waited for people to turn up. I tried to go up to the 2nd floor only to find that it had been closed off. Noticing my confusion, the barman asked if I was there for speed dating. I said yes. He told me it was canceled. I didn't get an email about this, nothing. So I sat there, dressed up and alone. I finished my pint and went home. Story 16, not a waiter, but was out with my girlfriend, and we were seated next to a date. Guy was clearly trying to engage with the girl, but the girl kept looking at her phone, disinterested. Guy initiated all the conversations, only to be met with one-word answers. He ordered a lot of food. It's a dessert place, so a lot of small meals, and then the girl suddenly took her bag and left. He banged the table after about paying and just left with the food untouched. Everyone in the vicinity, including the waiters, were visibly shocked. I felt so bad for the guy. Story 17, not exactly a waiter, but I was working at a bar a few years back, and there often was this girl in her early 20s, maybe, who sometimes used to meet her mother at the bar maybe about every 2 or 3 months. The thing is, more often than not, the mother either came extremely late 1 or 2 hours, at least OT, didn't came at all. When she came, there often was a huge tension between the two. It was obvious that they had some unresolved issues. Watching the girl wait for hours, even if it was clear that the mother wouldn't come on that day, always broke my heart. As a barkeeper, and since she was a regular, I tried my best to engage a conversation with her to distract her a little, but there's only so much you could do. Fun fact, years after I stopped working at that bar, I met her at a random party, and we had a great evening night together. She told me that she broke up with her mother, though. Story 18, I'm not a waiter, but I got one of story. I was going for a friend's party at a restaurant, and when I got there was a kid sitting by the door. He was also coming to the party. When I told the waiters I was there for the party, as well they called my friend, and he identified me immediately, but had never seen the kid before. As it turned out, his friend who invited him to the party had the party days before and gave him the wrong date. We felt bad for the kid, so we let him join our party. That day, I made a new friend. Story 19, not a waiter here. On my 18th birthday, this girl invited me out to drink with her friends. Because all of mine were too young to drink, I said no at first, but they insisted, so I went along. Got there when they said they would. Ended up waiting at the bar 2 hours before they showed up. Had a short introduction, and then they went off to the bathroom. One of her friends came back out and told me that she wanted me to leave. It really hurt, but I didn't see the point of arguing. Worst part was when I got home, I found out she was spreading lies that I had stalked her to the bar and told all her mutual friends. On an 18th birthday, Story 20, not a waiter, but a patron at the restaurant. My girlfriend had taken me out to this local niche-type restaurant. One of the ones that was the type where you could get vintage old game and stuff to play while you got your food. As we get in, and seated young man around my age at the time, think 18 to 20-ish, comes in holding a nice bunch of flowers, and he's dressed really nice with the hair done up and everything. It clearly took him a lot of preparation. So me and my girlfriend order ND talk and enjoy the evening, and we realize that this guy is still alone. After an hour, we have our food and are eating, but he's still sitting there drinking a soda and checking his phone, then the door, then his phone every 5 minutes. This went on for the whole 2-ish hours we were there. It became obvious by his increasing anxiety and glum look that he must known he was stood up, but either couldn't accept it yet or was still desperately holding out hope. Me and my girlfriend felt so bad for him that when we paid our bill, we gave the waitress extra money to send him a cheesecake. Waitress ended up giving him 2, just because she felt bad as well. To this day, it still sticks with me seeing that poor kid go through that. And it boggles my mind because the guy wasn't bad looking. There wasn't anything apparently wrong with him. Not that it would justify it if there was. It just adds to the confusion. People can really be shitty sometimes. Edits, some people commented on the waitress giving him 2 pieces. I meant it more in the sense that she gave him 2 pieces, but in the sense of a double portion, not 2 separate servings to rub it in. I apologize for not clarifying that. Story 21, I'm not a waiter, but I set up a joint party for my son and my nephew who have the same birthday. His stepmom decided not to bring him to his own party. Story 22, this one was tough. I worked at a pretty fancy steakhouse in town, and we had a private dining room that could set up to 32 at a single, long table. To book the room, we charged a $1,500 deposit, which we then used to cover part of the bill. It was a deposit, not a room charge. Anyways, this girl books it for 26 people, puts the deposit on her card. She shows up with her sister, and then after about 20 minutes, 2 of their friends show up and sit at the opposite end of this giant table from the birthday girl and her sister. Nobody else came. They waited an hour. The birthday girl was sobbing. The other 2 just awkwardly left. It was awful and grateful to my manager, who in a moment of compassion refunded the whole deposit back onto the poor girl's card. I felt terrible for her. Story 23, I'm not a waiter, but once my friend and I were out at a restaurant celebrating our new apartment. There were some people sitting next to us that were in a Tinder date. The girl kept asking the guy questions about what was apparently on his profile, and he kept saying he didn't do that or just put that on there to get someone to like him. She seemed so defeated. At one point, he got up without saying anything, and when she asked where he was going, he ignored her. Came back about 5 minutes later when this girl looks like she's on the verge of tears. She asked where he went, and he just said bathroom and went back to eating. It was awkward to witness. Story 24, this gentleman in his mid-40s came to my restaurant frequently and would not order his drink until his wife got there. He would wait for a few minutes, then pull out a framed picture of a woman, set it on the table, and proceed to order his food and drink. He would talk to the framed picture and have dinner with her about once a week. I noticed him doing this often and told my coworker I thought it was cute he was having dinner with his late wife, and she replied, "Oh, no, that's not his wife. He found that picture at Goodwill and has been in a relationship with it ever since. He told me that a long time ago. What did I expect from working right off the freeway in Cracktown?" Very true story, no lie. Story 25, we had a 21st birthday party booked for 20. The family showed up early with a few friends. They had a few drinks and let the staff know some of the party were running late. Half an hour in, when the late people were supposed to arrive, 2 friends left, an hour went by, and the birthday group ordered. Got their starters, told the service staff some more people were coming. About 2 hours, and the mother said, "Just bring the mains out." It was so sad. I felt so bad for them. being stood up by 14 people, and the two friends who did show up didn't even eat. Story 26, not a waiter, but worked at a coffee shop for several years and made friends with tons of regulars. One of the regulars, we'll call him Jay, was working on his PhD in art history or something to that effect at the university near us. He came in one day, got his usual tea, and asked if I could charge him for a latte. But make it later, no big deal. I was bussing tables and asked who the latte was for, and very excitedly expressed that he was meeting a lady, and it was kind of a date. He was an awkward kind of guy, but very interesting and incredibly friendly. 1 hour passes. No show. 2. No show. Finally 3. He's looking despondent and starts collecting his things and leaves. She showed up 20 minutes later asking about Jay. Apparently they got their times completely mixed up. He comes in the next day, and I mentioned that she came in looking for him, and he looked so excited. I found out a week or so later from him that she basically blew him off a second time. He was so crestfallen, it broke my heart. Story 27, I was the sad schmuck on December 23rd, 2019. I had set up a date with an amazing girl from Tinder. We had a lot in common, very attractive, and she lived close by. We agreed over Snapchat to meet at a Red Robin's in the area for our first date, even though she would be a little late. I got to the restaurant on time because I had no idea what a little late meant, and got a table with a view of the door and started waiting. The first 15 minutes passed with me excitedly telling the waitress I was expecting someone and wouldn't be ordering yet. The next 15 minutes passed with me openly staring at the door, sitting up whenever someone would walk in. After 45 minutes, the waitress asked if I wanted anything. I told her I was still waiting while I watched the door anxiously. At 1 hour, I was planning on leaving soon and swinging by Target on my way home. I realized I hadn't given this girl my number, and I didn't have data, so we had no way of communicating. 15 minutes later, I was about to muster up the courage to leave when two waitresses that had stopped by previously came to tell me they felt so sad and wanted to buy me a milkshake. I thanked them, but told them I had lost my appetite and half-heartedly joked that this wouldn't even be the worst thing that happened to me today. My childhood dog had been put down earlier that morning, and I had spent the hours before the date digging her grave. I told one of the waitresses, JC, whose kindness I will always remember, that I had no way of communicating with my date without Wi-Fi, to which she responded by giving me her hotspot password. I connected as fast as I could and opened Snapchat to find dozens of messages from my date, explaining how her only good pants were locked in the dryer, and if I minded that she showed up in sweats. I sent her my number and told her I would be glad if she showed up at all. A few minutes later, she walked in and explained that she had been in the parking lot for the past 15 minutes, not getting a response from me. Thinking that I had stood her up and was about to leave when she got my text, we're still grateful to the waitress, JC, for helping us get together. Story 28, not a server anymore or at the time, but I still remember this one like 20 years later. My D&D group was currently that week without a place to game. So we went to the local Denny's. We told the waitress that we would be there for about 6 hours. Yes, we tipped her very well for camping that long. Anyway, about an hour into our session, this guy comes in and sits at a two-top in clear view of me. He sets a single rose on the table and sits down. When the waitress took his drink order, he was all smiles. Nothing really dramatic happens. But over the next 4 hours or so, I just watch his body language change. He checks his phone like every 2 or 3 minutes, never gets a call, never seems to get or send a text. Finally, after the 4 hours, he just gets up, leave a 20 on the table. He only ordered a soft drink as far as I could tell, and just walks out. No idea why, but that image of the table, a single drink, the tip, and the abandoned rose stayed with me all my life. Story 29, my co-workers just told me this story last week, and I cried. I work a semi-classy seafood restaurant in Southeast Michigan, and the host who has been working there for a long time said she had the sweetest old man who came with a single rose and vase, set it up himself, and ordered a bottle of champagne, sitting by the table in a chiller and everything. And he just waited for a date that never showed. Literally cried when she told me this. Another one they had was the guy who set up the reservation called to cancel it the day of and asked the host to please inform his date. They told him they obviously didn't have her number, and he just hung up. The woman showed up dressed to the nine and was stunning, apparently his loss. Story 30, this is similar. A man in his 80s used to come in on his own every night. Without fail, always ordered the same thing, was genuinely lovely to the staff. It turned out his wife had died a few years previously, and coming to the restaurant and talking to waiters was the only social interaction he had all day. We ended up giving him free meals every day, just so he could keep coming. Story 31 happened to my friend. She was a hostess at a restaurant and sat this old lady at a table while she was waiting for her friend. She stayed there for a few hours asking every now and then if her friend had showed up. My friend was heartbroken and told this to her co-worker who was working the other side of the restaurant. Turns out her coworker also had an old lady alone at a table who had been waiting patiently for a friend. The ladies got a chance to chat a bit before they left, so it was a happy ending at least. Story 32. Back in college, I always picked up the Christmas buffet shift, which is really awesome shift since we had banquet hall, so OT with holiday pay. And tips, there was this old woman whose would show up every year and always had table for two. It was such a regular thing that owner would reserve the table for her and even arrange for where her table was near his family table. So she would get the best service. She would always arrive alone before the dinner rush. Never order any drinks, just calmly get her meal and eat. She always left a big tip 50 in a Christmas card. After she was done, she would ask for taxi to be called and thank the staff. Turns out her husband died a few years before I started there, and that was what they always did for Christmas. Reason she was 8 alone after her death. Her kids forgot about her and just leave her in the retirement home. Happy part of the story. The owner paid for her meal, cab, reservation, literally everything came out of his pocket. Even the tip started to come out of his pocket. Well, he kept the letter in his office. Why? Because he was that pissed off about kids abandoning their parent on Christmas. 100K corp event. Not a single instruction from him. One old lady alone on Christmas. He would handpick the staff that served her. Didn't care how that affected everyone else's Christmas meal. Story 33 was a customer rather than wait staff. But this saddened me so much. My then boyfriend and I went to a popular local Indian restaurant, which is very small and cozy. You could easily bump arms with the next table over, and this meant you were often privy to other diners' conversation. A couple were seated next to us, and it was clear from their conversation that they had only recently started dating. He was an airline pilot, and she was a steward, and they were in the city for a layover. At first, I was cringing a little at how effusive they were, and how they started talking about getting married despite clearly not knowing one another very well at all. But hey, it's the honeymoon phase, so no judgment here. She then innocently mentions a coworker had recently texted her to ask how things were going between them. This was evidently a very big mistake. The guy's attitude just changed instantly. He started questioning her aggressively as to why this colleague had her number in the first place. She seemed to think he was joking initially and laughed, explaining absolutely feasibly that most of the in-flight staff had one another's numbers so they could discuss shift changes, swaps, etc. He went quiet for a while, and she tried in vain to keep things cheerful. He then straight up called her A and demanded to know if she had ever kissed this coworker. The entire restaurant could hear this, and we were all mortified. I wish now that ID spoke up on her behalf, but being British and too afraid of being impolite, I kept my mouth shut. The guy proceeded to verbally abuse her, then got up and left the restaurant, leaving her in tears. She left shortly thereafter. My boyfriend and I left as well, and stumbled across her leaning against the wall outside, just breaking her heart over this guy. I approached and gave her a hug, told her that I had overheard the whole thing and that she had done nothing wrong. I was quite stern at this point, and told her this guy was a misogynistic and she deserved better. If this was how he was behaving now, what would he be like once the honeymoon phase was well and truly over? Eventually, she asked us to call her a taxi, as she needed to find her way back to their hotel. I was so worried about this guy that I offered her a spare room in my own flat, but she insisted she needed to get back to their hotel and speak to him. I hope she left him poor girl. Story 34, the waiter here. This was at my first job when I was maybe 16 or 17 and didn't have many friends. I'd been asked by coworkers to go bowling one afternoon. I was excited to go, as I didn't really get to go hang out with anyone very much, and my crush was the one who asked me to go. I got the details from my crush via text, and got to the bowling alley a little early to make sure I had the right place. I headed in and realized I was the first one there. Over the next hour, I called each person who had said they were going, and each one sent me to voicemail. I'm pretty sure the alley staff thought I was being sketchy as too. I ended up going home and just never brought it up at work. Even though I know my manager would have gone off on the staff for doing that to me, dude had a soft spot for me and told me I was like the kid he never had. He was a really kind man. Story 35, I wouldn't call it pitiful to watch. But my own story is that I came to a hookah lounge looking to meet up with a girl I just met and her male friend. I got us a table in the back and waited for about 30 minutes. She said she was walking and was on the way. But eventually the male friend he didn't want to go and convinced her to go with him someplace else. Afterwards, she let me know that he was probably just jealous and told me when we got together in the future, she just wouldn't invite him. We ended up hanging out several times after that. Looking back at our interactions, it seems like she likes the attention, but feels bad sometimes when it gets out of hand and hurts someone else. Don't know if she just pities me or if she was genuine. A lot more has happened since. Don't think he'll respond the next time she texts me, might just need to let it go. Story 36, not my story, but my sister. There was a boy in my niece's class, think 3rd to 4th grade. kind of chubby, quiet kid. He invited people to his birthday party. My sister made my niece go to be polite. Luckily she did, cause only my niece went from the classroom. His mother was so happy she went. My sister felt so bad for him. But I think he was just happy one person came to his party. So when my niece had her birthday party at a skating rink, she invited him too. He was ecstatic. I met the boy, very good kid, and he had a blast at her party. I think some of the kids wanted to go to his party, but the parents were just too lazy. Seriously, parents, imagine if that was your kid's party. I make my son go to every birthday party, and all the kids, including my son, love it. Story 37. I'm male, was waiting for my date female when the waitress asked, want any water before he gets here? I mean, she gets here, wait, no, water. Water, please, I replied. Edit if you're reading this and you don't have some water within reach. Your mom is a... Story 38. Not quite the same, and this will probably get lost in the comments, but just have to say this: the other day, I greet an older gentleman at a table. He looks quite sad and tells me that had just been to see his wife who has Alzheimer's at a care home, and that this was the place they had come on their first date. He said it is really tough when someone you love looks at you and doesn't recognize you. Sometimes she just stares into my eyes and asks, do I know you? It is such a horrible illness. I was so sad for him. He was so close to tears. Story 39. They had a reservation for 12 people. It was the girl's 17th birthday, and she arrives first with her boyfriend. Her dad comes a few minutes later. The three of them wait about 45 minutes and decide to just order. They eat and are about to leave when the rest of her family shows up drunk. They make a scene about how they weren't hungry and had to show up so nobody would be mad at them for not coming. Eat her cake and leave. The birthday girl was crying, and her dad and boyfriend were trying to console her. Story 40. Had a lady probably in her late 70s, early 80s come in with her daughter for a birthday dinner. They got there early and set up some small decorations on the table, a bouquet, or two, some balloons. They waited for over an hour and a half before they told me that they guessed no one was coming, and they'd go ahead and order. They had invited over a dozen people, and no one even called. I told the lady that the people she invited were missing out, and we chatted for a bit. I tried to make sure that I checked in on her a lot, made small talk, cracked a few dad jokes, and while she was very sweet, you could tell she was disappointed. I mean, at her age, who knows how many birthdays you have left at that point in your life. I feel like family and friends would be the most important thing to you. They finished, thanked me, left a tip, and departed. Later that evening, about 5 hours later, two young men, about 20 to 25, showed up and asked if the such-and-such birthday party had been seated yet. I told them they'd missed a fun dinner and that it had ended hours ago. They didn't seem to care and just ambled out. Edit forgot to mention that the daughter was texting the would-be guests but got no answers. Story 41. Years ago, when I was bartending, a man showed up in the early afternoon and told me that he was waiting on someone. And when I asked, he told me that it was his ex-wife and that they were celebrating that day. Now, that was something that I wasn't about to dig into, so I just went on with my work. But once she arrived, they seemed remarkably friendly with each other and started ordering the works: steaks, expensive drinks, appetizers they only took a bite or two of, and multiple desserts. Towards the end of the meal, while chatting with the two of them, I made the mistake of asking what they were celebrating. They told me that it was the birthday of their son who passed away, and every year they get together despite their divorce to celebrate him, order all his favorite food, and drink all his favorite drinks. They got a bit misty-eyed, but this seemed like a therapeutic experience for them. I, on the other hand, had to take 5 in a walk-in freezer to have a little cry afterwards.